Order. This is May 28, 2020. Michael Jackson, President of the Board. This is the BRN meeting with agenda items that were left over from previous months. There will be items 6.0 and 7.0 that we'll be covering from yesterday. I'd like to establish a quorum and call the roll, beginning with Donna Gerber.
Donna Gerber, present. Public member appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly.
Imelda Ceja Buckowitz.
Good morning. Imelda Ceja Buckowitz, public member appointed by the Governor. Welcome, everyone.
Kenneth Marlborough.
Good morning, Ken Marlborough, public member appointed by the Senate Rules Committee.
Karen Skelton.
Good morning, Karen Skelton, public member appointed by the Governor.
Trandy Phillips.
Good morning, Trandy Phillips. I'm direct care provider appointed by the Governor.
Dolores Trujillo.
Good morning, Dolores Trujillo, direct care provider appointed by the Governor.
Elizabeth Woods.
Good morning, Elizabeth Woods, appointed by the Governor in the advanced practice role.
And our acting executive officer.
Good morning, Loretta Melby, acting executive officer appointed by the board.
We've established a quorum. Moving on to item 2.0. This is general instructions for the format of the teleconference.
Good morning. This is the moderator of the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. The moderator will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, the individual's microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When asking your question, please make sure the question is directed at the host in the dropdown. Also, if any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subject to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when board members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, BRN moderator. We're going to be moving along to item 6.0. Item 6.0 is report of the legislative committee, and this will be led by our chairperson, Donna Gerber.
Good morning. Just as a reminder of how this particular agenda item is related to everything else, this is essentially, these are recommendations on legislation made by the legislative committee in March that were on the April board agenda to be approved by the board. We didn't get to it because the WebEx platform evaporated. So we are completing that action today. However, as a first item of business under 6.1, And before I ask our Chief of Legislation, Thelma Harris, to weigh in here, I want to add an Assembly Bill 2288 by Evan Lowe to this list. The reason that it was not on the list is because it was a gut and amend bill from a previous subject that was acted on by the legislature following the posting of today's agenda. The agenda had to be posted on the 15th, and I believe the bill was not in existence until around the 18th. So I would like to add AB 2288 to this agenda for the board to vote on, and we will discuss it. But in order to do that, I'm advised by legal counsel that we need to take an action, a special vote by section 11125 to add it to our agenda because of the need to take immediate action. And the reason we need to take immediate action is because this bill has already moved through the Assembly B&P Committee. It will probably be heard in Assembly Appropriations as early as June 3rd. And so given the way the legislative calendar is operating right now, that is things moving much more quickly than usual. We need to take action as a board, and we will miss the opportunity to do that if we don't do it today. Might I ask if Reza is on the call in the meeting? Did I
Yes.
state that properly?
Yes, Donna, this is Reza. Thank you for that. If I may, I'd like to just take a second and add to that very briefly. Again, just to kind of reiterate some of what Donna was saying and add to it a bit. This agenda item that Donna mentioned, AB 2288, was not on the agenda that was posted for this meeting. The authority under which we are proposing to discuss it at this meeting is Government Code Section 11125.3, Subdivision A2. That section allows a state body to discuss and take action on an item that was not on the noticed agenda under a couple of circumstances. One is an emergency situation, which we are not asserting here. The other criteria is if a 2/3 vote of the state body determines that there exists a need to take immediate action and that the need for action came to the attention of the state body subsequent to the agenda being posted as specified in section 11125. So as Donna mentioned, I believe that the gut and amend of AB 2288 occurred after the agenda was posted or without time for us to become aware of the gut and amend to add it to this agenda. Prior to the gut and amend, it had nothing to do with nursing from what I understand, so there was no reason for us to talk about it. So I think that that fact explains why the need to take action came to the attention of the board after the agenda was posted. So the board members, in order to move forward with discussing this item, would need to make a 2/3 vote that there does exist a need to take immediate action. And I believe Donna kind of touched on why we need to take action on this bill so quickly. So if there's any questions on that, please let me know. Otherwise, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to take a vote of the full board to add AB 2288 to 6.1 of the agenda. And I'll move that motion. Do I have a second?
I second it. Michael Jackson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Is there public comment for it?
Oh, correct.
We will be opening public comment now. I will be activating the Q&A feature. We have a screen share right now that we are doing for the members of the public to see how they should submit their questions. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box. I would like to make a comment. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to do that. Board President, it appears there are no public comments.
Thank you very much. Just proceed with the vote, Donna.
Okay, so with this, for board members, a reminder that this particular vote requires a 2/3 majority of the actual full board. So we have a motion and a second. Michael Jackson,
Michael Jackson votes yes.
Donna Gerber votes yes. Betty Woods,
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips,
Phillips, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Dolores, yes.
Karen Skelton,
Karen, yes.
Imelda Sebekowitz,
Imelda votes yes.
and Ken Marlborough.
Marlboro, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That item is added to the agenda for the committee. Is Thelma Harris here?
Am I unmuted? Hello?
There you are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so shall we go through the list of bills? We're only going to speak to the bills that action needed to be either reiterated or clarified again from originally from the April meeting. So beginning with AB 890, which is by Wood, it's the nurse practitioner bill. Thelma, is there any change to this bill that we know of right now, or is it still the same as it was the last time we took a position on it?
There has not been any change at this time. It is showing a status of, excuse me, Assembly Appropriations. Assembly Appropriations has not scheduled it on any of their hearings at this point, but there has not been any change to the language at all.
Okay, so members of the committee, the position on this bill is still support if amended. The main amendment that we need is that currently the bill would set up an entirely new licensing board. So we have suggested that that would not be a good idea. And that's the amendment that we're seeking in our position. Any questions from the committee, from the board?
Donna, this is Karen. What is the reasoning behind setting up a new licensing board?
It's hard for me to really answer that. It's an amendment that the author took to the original bill. And it creates for us all kinds of problems. And it probably doesn't really serve the nurse practitioner as well. So this is a controversy that currently exists. So we're hoping that in the discussion about the bill moving forward, the separate board part of it will be amended out.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any
other
Ms.
questions?
Gerber? Hi, it's Trandy Phillips.
Yes.
Are we sending another letter, or are we just continuing to communicate with the author and our concerns about the double jeopardy of nurses having two boards they're accountable to?
I think our letter is still on point. So I don't think we need to change that. Thelma, do you see any need to modify the letter at this point?
At this point, I don't. We did send in 2 appropriations for their review that in order for a new board to be set up and utilizing the board that we now use, there would be over $1 million in cost. So there is a fiscal cost that appropriations will need to take attention to.
Any other questions by board members?
Donna, this is Betty.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out a couple of things about this bill. This bill is supposedly attempting to give nurse practitioners more autonomy in practice. Yet this board that they want to establish would have physicians on the board.
Thank you for highlighting one of our reasons for wanting it amended. That's absolutely correct. So I will put a motion on the floor to continue the board's position of support if amended. And if I can have a second, then we can open it up to public comment.
Michael Jackson seconds.
I'm sorry, may I interrupt? Excuse me. Our position was opposed unless amended.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, opposed unless amended.
Michael Jackson still seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Moderator, would you please open the portal for public comment?
The portal for public comment is open. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box. I would like to make a comment. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to do that. Board Member Gerber, it appears we have no comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will take the vote on our position on the bill. Donna Gerber, yes. Michael Jackson,
Michael Jackson, yes.
Randy Phillips,
Randy Phillips, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Imelda Sibekowitz,
Imelda votes yes.
Ken Marlborough,
Marlboro, yes.
Karen Skelton,
Skelton, yes.
and I know I'm Betty Woods.
Woods, yes.
Okay, bear with me, guys. I'm doing this, and I don't have a list of you in front of me. So, and I'm juggling 2 different pieces of equipment here, both my phone and my computer. So, the motion passes. Thelma, could you help me go down the list here of Thank you.
Yes, I definitely will. So the next bill, which unfortunately is not highlighted, but it should have been highlighted, I'm sorry about that, would be Assembly Bill 2028. And this bill requires relevant documents regarding an agenda item to be posted online 10 days prior to a public and to the public, and it clarifies the right of the public to comment on the agenda items. The committee did vote on this bill to oppose unless amended. And the reason being is that currently the BRN has 10 calendar days for our agenda to be posted. Our materials are posted generally the Friday before the meeting, if not Monday at the latest. And so this bill would state that everything needs to be posted all at the 10 calendar days. And I'd like to just give some clarification as to why we wanted to continue the way that we're doing it. Although you receive the materials quite late, we're trying to get them to you as soon as possible. You are receiving the most up-to-date materials. So that is the reason that we're opposing unless amended. And this bill right now is set for Assembly Appropriations, and all of the appropriation bills right now will be heard one time, June 2nd. And that is because of all the new schedules with the calendar for the legislature. There will only be one meeting June 2nd, and then June 3rd is their suspense file meeting. So that is AB 2028.
Okay, so the position is oppose unless amended. Is there, let's see, any questions from board members?
Oh, yeah, this is Ken Marlborough. I have a question on that. So if it passes, are we saying that we do not have the capacity to meet those requirements with the adding the materials as well as the agenda?
I think what we're saying, Ken, is that, I mean, we can add whatever materials we have based on the deadline that is in the legislation. However, they will not be the most up-to-date materials.
Okay. Thank you. I understand that, but what we just did today, we added a bill today, and I hadn't had a chance to read it. So is it kind of the same situation that if we don't have up to date, we'll have to just add and vote on it during the meeting? I'm okay with it, but I do have a concern on getting, and I know it's difficult, but getting the information a day before or a couple of days. We're getting better at it, but I'd like to see the information delivered to us a little earlier than a few days before the meeting. Just my only comment.
Actually, I think we all have the same feeling about it. And I know that staff have advised that they believe that they can do better in most cases in terms of being able to post the information, and that's certainly the goal. But as you may know, the agenda and the materials that do get posted to the website actually have to be produced by staff some days ahead of the actual posting, because a lot of this stuff has to go not just through the BRN, but in levels above the BRN. So that's the difficulty, and it's not that this isn't a good idea. It's what's possible on a practical level, and the consequences in either direction. I think I think what we're trying to figure out is how to get the best balance.
And I'd
I
like to
got it.
comment.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment also, as Donna was explaining, that 10 calendar days that we, that the board, that we post the agenda, for staff, it means that 5 days beforehand, we have to have our information in so that it can be reviewed and approved, and it goes through legal, and then it comes back to us. So really, we're talking about 15 days. And when you think of 15 days in a calendar day, especially in a month, that's right before, our board meeting. So you would not have the most up-to-date information.
Thank you. I get it.
Okay, any other comments by board members before we open it up to public comment? Do I have a second on the motion?
I'm second it. Michael Jackson seconds it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Moderator, would you please open it up to public comment?
I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a public comment by typing into the question box. I would like to make a comment. I'll pause for a moment for the members of the public to do that. Okay, Board President, we have a member of the public with the name of Saskia Kim who would like to make a comment. Member of the public, I will unmute your microphone in a moment and give you a verbal cue once you are unmuted. Saskia Kim, you're unmuted.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Saskia Kim with the California Nurses Association. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this morning. CNA is the sponsor of AB 2028. We appreciate your consideration of the bill. We believe it will close loopholes in Bagley-Keene and provide for greater transparency and disclosure in state public meetings. Bagley-Keene was written to protect public meetings, public notice, and ensure transparency of actions by state agencies, boards, and commissions. As you know, the Act requires the state body to disclose an agenda 10 days prior to a meeting, but this doesn't include any supporting documents the body will consider in the decision-making process. Requiring these public records to be placed online in a timely manner aligns with the policy goals of public disclosure. Public disclosure is intended to allow members of the public adequate time to review relevant items so they can provide substantive and informed comment at a meeting of the state body. Otherwise, the public is left without a substantive understanding of the contents of the meeting. Many agencies, commissions, and boards do post their agenda and supporting materials to their website 10 days prior to their meetings, and this public disclosure document seems to be common best practice but not current law, so that means at any time a state body could choose to change its practice. And we have had the experience where boards don't actually post their materials at all online. We understand the board has concerns about complying with AB 2028. I think it would be helpful if the board could clarify the amendments it's seeking. And then we're, of course, willing to work with the board and others who have any concerns about the bill. Thank you for considering the comments.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, I will, or hearing none, I will respond to the question in terms of what kind of amendment we're seeking. Thelma, can you clarify what our letter says at this point?
Currently, at this point, we have not sent a letter out, but what we're looking at is the fact that we have been quite consistent in making sure that our materials are compliant with that our agendas are compliant with Bagley-Keene, and we wanted to continue this because it is meeting the needs of our board to be able to vote and use the information most relevant at the time in making their decisions.
Well, I think then what we should recommend on this bill is that the posting period for the posting deadline for the materials would be the Friday prior to the week of the meeting.
Yes.
And that is our current practice, which we have been attempting to meet more and more, even though it's not required. That would mean that there would most likely be there would be about 3 business days notice and 5 calendar days notice, most of the time prior to the board's meeting. So that the motion I would make is that be our suggested amendment. That we oppose unless amended. With that amendment. Any questions or comments from board members?
I second your motion.
We have a motion and a second. I will, hang on, I will call the roll. Michael Jackson,
Michael Jackson, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes. Elizabeth Woods,
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips,
Randy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Sebekowitz,
Imelda, yes.
Kenneth Marlborough,
Marlboro, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Trujillo, yes.
and Karen Skelton.
Skelton, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Go right ahead, Thelma.
All right, moving right along, AB 2185. This bill basically is a bill that applies to, I'm sorry, just a second. I'm sorry, this bill is a bill that is asking or requiring that persons who meet certain requirements, but not limited to, people who are married or domestic partnership with legal union and they're active duty member of the United States, and they currently stand in good standing with the same scope of practice, that they would be able to have apply for a license in their field and be granted that license. I'm sorry, the reason I was kind of struggling through this is that the committee at the time when we heard the bill, because it was talking about reciprocity of licenses, and we know we've had a lot of this coming at us, the committee at the time did vote to oppose the bill. However, talking to the author's office, they are using the BRN as an example of how to process licenses in the state. So we're already doing this. And so this bill actually exempts the BRN. And thankfully, CNA did step up also and help in educating the author that the BRN is also doing this and assisted us. So our recommendation at this point is to reconsider the position and to remove the opposition, to retract, and if so, to support the bill.
Okay. So the position we would be taking today would be a support as amended, correct?
Support as amended. We could support as amended or just support.
Well, we got to make sure the amendment stays in there.
Okay.
Support as amended. And that would be the recommendation of the committee to the board for today. I would make that motion. Do I have a second?
Michael Jackson seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Moderator, could you open up the public portal, please?
I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate if they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box. I would like to make a comment. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to do that. Board member Brazil Smith would like to make a comment. Brazil Smith, I will unmute your comment. I'm sorry, I will unmute your microphone in a minute. Go ahead, Brazil. Sorry, board member Gerber. Brazil Smith would like you to repeat your motion.
No problem. The motion is, and this is on AB 2185. The motion is support as amended. Okay, so now, thank you. We will call the roll for the vote. Donna Gerber, yes.
Donna, this is Betty. Don't we have some discussion for the board?
Oh, sorry.
Because I have a question.
Feel free.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
I need some clarification on this, please. This bill, the way it is now, does not include the BRN. Is there actually language in there that states that?
Yes, it does. It states specifically that is a section in the bill that says it does not apply to the Board of Registered Nursing or any other board that currently authorizes license portability as a component of qualifying for licensure in this state.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments by board members or questions? Hearing none. Donna Gerber, yes. Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips.
Randy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Seha-Bekowitz.
Imelda, yes.
Ken Marble.
Malbrough, yes.
Dolores Trujillo.
Trujillo, yes.
And Karen Skelton.
Skelton, yes.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, Thelma.
All right, we're going to go to Assembly Bill 2549 by Assemblymember Salas. And the subject of this bill, again, we're talking about temporary licenses. The committee did not take a position on this. We were planning to discuss this with the board. I think we needed to get a better understanding of what exactly this bill was focusing on. This bill adds specified licensing boards to the list of boards that are required to issue temporary licenses to military spouses. And it requires the board to promulgate regulations and make other technical changes. What we have discovered is that we already do this. The BRN already has we're going to call it a military button. We have staff that are assigned to this and work with our military spouses. And so we are compliant to this bill, and this bill would not in any way impact the work that we're already doing. So the recommendation would be to either go ahead and support the bill or not to take any action as far as a position on this bill.
Well, it sounds, thank you, Thelma. It sounds like what we can do is put a watch on the bill, which we do on most bills that have some impact on us but are moving through the process. So we would just continue to watch it to see that it remains the same. And that would be my recommendation to the board.
Michael Jackson seconds that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can the moderator please open the public portal?
I have activated the question and answer feature. Board moderator, I'm sorry, board member Gerber, there are no questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And now we will vote on the motion.
I have a comment.
Michael, oh, sure.
This is Imelda Ceja-Bedquitz. I think that's great that we're already doing this. I'm okay with watching the bill, but I think we should really consider supporting the bill because we want the other boards to follow our lead. Again, I'm okay with watching it, but I think they should follow our lead and we need to be supportive so they do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Imelda. We have a motion. We'll go ahead and vote on the motion. And then if the board wants to consider Imelda's motion, we can go there. Any other comments by board members?
Michael
Okay,
Jackson,
hearing none.
yes.
Donna Gerber, yes. Elizabeth Woods,
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips,
Randy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Sebekowitz,
Imelda, yes.
Ken Marlborough,
Malbro, yes.
Dolores Trujillo,
Trujillo, yes.
and Karen Skelton. Karen, are you there?
Sorry, Skelton, yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, Thelma, next.
All right, Assembly Bill 2635. This is Assemblymember Gallagher's bill. This bill is specific around nursing programs and clinical hours. And basically what the bill is requiring is that to decrease from 75% of clinical hours to 25%. Or if you want to look at it the other way, is to increase simulation to 75%. The Legislative Committee did not take a position on this bill because it was introduced, or basically it was a gut and amend also that came through right after our meeting.
And what's the current status of the bill?
The bill now is set for Assembly Judiciary, and I talked to the Judiciary Committee yesterday. They do not have a date yet as to when they will be meeting.
Okay. So it sounds like the bill conceivably is still alive, although it hasn't been scheduled. This is in the same category as our issues around simulation and direct patient care clinical training. So I would recommend at this point that we take an opposed position on the bill.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Moderator, could you open the public comment, please?
I've activated the question and answer feature. Board Member Gerber, Kim Saskia would like to make a comment.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Go ahead,
Good
Kim
morning.
Saskia.
Thank you. Thank you
Morning.
again. Good morning. Saskia Kim with the California Nurses Association. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this bill, AB 2635, which would reduce direct patient care clinical hours to 25%, if allowing for 75% simulation during a state or local emergency. CNA opposes this bill because it threatens, and unlike AB 2288, which I believe is on your agenda either today or in the committee reports, this bill, AB 2635, is not narrow or limited in its application. So we oppose it because we believe the exclusion of student nurses from clinical rotations undermines patient care. And we believe it's important not to undervalue the contribution that students can make to patient care. We have historically opposed replacing direct patient care clinical experience with skills laboratory learning. The most sophisticated mannequin cannot replicate human response to nursing care or indicate the subtle changes that can occur during the course of an illness. Cannot replace mentored experiential time with patients in the actual environment of care. Students should be educated so they're able to develop skills and critical thinking abilities rather than simply being trained in tasks. The observations made and knowledge acquired during clinical training are the beginning of a vast amount of experiential learning that's going to be needed to provide safe and effective direct care to patients in hospitals, clinics, and community settings. CNA believes protection of the public requires direct patient care experience, and we worry about the potential for reduced clinical competency. Moreover, CNA has had concerns regarding the exponential growth of private nursing programs, and the latest annual schools report indicates the percentage of public programs has declined in the last 10 years, while the number of private programs has increased during the same time period. And some of these programs continue to expand even today. In the past, some of these private schools were the main proponents of efforts to decrease direct patient care clinical hours and increase simulation. As a result, CNA remains concerned private nursing programs will be able to take advantage of increased simulation more so than their public nursing program counterparts. And for all those reasons, we oppose. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the public comment. Do we have any more public comment?
Board Member Gerber, Judy Corliss would like to make a comment.
Please go ahead.
Is it on there?
Go ahead, Judy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing on my screen. So I know that this came about as a result of our emergency situation that we are in. And we have more than 15,000 students that will not graduate if this doesn't get put in under an emergency order. If by the time they get close to the end of their training, like we are in right now, they don't know how to take care of a patient, then they've missed their whole program. So the simulation does allow for critical thinking, and it does allow for all the things that our previous speaker said that it did not. So we have had KT Waxman, who's an expert in simulation, come and present all of the things that this would do to help the students graduate. And they are going to go into training with what they need to work as a first day RN. So I believe we should put this forth. And, to say that it's not going to, help the students be competent is, I think, kind of a stretch. So based on the facts and the data across the nation that's been presented at the other boards, allowing the students to do this, there's been no adverse outcomes as far as the students are concerned. So I am for this, for emergency legislation at this time. So I hope other people will come forth as well. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Yes, do we have another member of the public, Mr. Moderator?
Board Member Gerber.
Yes.
One more, sorry.
It's okay.
Dr. Sharon Goldfarb would like to speak.
Adverse.
Go ahead, Sharon. I'm sorry.
As far as the students.
Hi, can you hear me?
So I'm for this, for emergency.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Sharon Goldfarb, Dean of Health Sciences at College of Marin and the President of California Organization of Associate Degree Nursing North. I support this bill and I was hoping that the Board of Registered Nursing will do the same. As you know, the majority of schools have lost a significant, if not all, of their clinical placements. With COVID-19, we really have no idea when we will return to normalcy. And all we're requesting is that we have the options to educate our nursing students. Without options, many schools are closing. Los Medanos is taking on no new students in fall, and there are other schools that are in similar boats. I also just want to say that even though the California Nurses Association is saying that simulation does not replace human contact, there is part of that that's true, but it's also that the mannequins have gotten so sophisticated that we can create those subtle changes and we can work with other students or actors who can replicate a patient experience. It's not the ideal, but when we have nothing, it's better than nothing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. Do we have any more public comment?
Board Member Gerber, public comments are finished.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll take it back to board position. I would make one point of information for the board. This bill, as you've heard, basically allows simulation up to 75%. Interestingly, the NCSBN issued a paper in 2017 that supports simulation in general and establishes or suggests certain guidelines and standards with it. And they actually say that there should be no more than 50% simulation in place of direct care clinical training. So for your information, I'll pass that on. I think we've received that information as a board as well. So on the bill,
Excuse me, Mr. Bird, this is Tran. Could you tell us what those initials?
Yes.
So the public knows.
National Council Boards of Registered Nursing, I believe. I'm not looking at it right this minute.
You're correct, Don. It's National Council State Board of Nursing.
There we go. Okay, thank you. So are we ready to vote on the bill, or are there any other comments or questions from the board?
I have a comment. This is a, go ahead, Board Member Marlborough. I'll go after you.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Michael. Just a comment and a question. This particular bill 2635 I haven't had a chance to really look at it, and I don't think what I've seen or heard, it doesn't show of any guidelines to go to 75% simulation. And what you just mentioned, the study, which was a good study that was done in, I thought it was 2014, but I think you're right, 2017. They actually did a real deep study of going to 50%, which I can support. on that based on that information because it had guidelines in there to set. But do you know for sure, Thelma or Donna, does this bill actually have guidelines in it to get to that 75%?
According to the language, there are not specific guidelines. It's just stating up to 75% of clinical hours in a course may be satisfied by simulation training.
Thank you.
Any more comments or questions by board members?
This is Michael Jackson.
Go ahead.
So my comment is not coming from the faculty role that I serve in on the board, but coming from an emergency department nurse who still currently works in the ER. The nurses that I work alongside with, they wouldn't be supportive of this bill because they feel that nursing students need to have that exposure to the human experience. Simulation is great for an adjunct, but not to replace hands-on clinical experience. You're dealing with people's lives here. There's no replacement for putting your hand on someone who is in impending doom and has that clammy skin feeling, or to look in their eye, or to see the panic in their family, or to even be involved in a pandemic situation where you can see how a charge nurse handles and designates resources. There's nothing that can replace being in a live clinical setting. And just like the pilot who landed the plane on the Hudson, he said no simulation could have taught him how to land that plane and save those people's lives. I'm sure a lot of people have watched that movie, and when he discussed the human factor in simulation, there is no replacing the human factor. Thank you, Donna Gerber. That's all my comments. And I vote yes.
Okay.
This is Imelda. I would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Imelda.
So currently we have an emergency waiver, right? Correct?
Correct.
It is 50%?
Correct. It's 50%, yes.
Okay. So I think that we need to collect the data from what is going on now. We need to see the trend. I think we could take it in baby steps. Again, we don't know what the results are going to be after this, hopefully this pandemic is over. I think once we collect that information, we'll have a better idea, better determination whether it should be increased or not. Again, I think we should take baby steps, and we did take a step forward. I just ask others to have patience with us. We don't want to rush into things. And, this is something we might consider in the future, but for now, I think we just need to take baby steps and leave it where it's at, or, make some adjustments. So thank you.
Thank you, Imelda. Any other?
Yeah, this is Betty. I'm not sure what the bill we're opposing. Did you say to oppose it? Because Michael said to accept it, so I'm not sure what we're doing here.
I think that's mistaken. The position is to oppose the bill. Michael, do you want to clarify?
Your motion was to oppose it.
Yeah, right. You had
That's why I'm voting yes to oppose it.
Yes to oppose it. Okay. I'm just clarifying that. And personally, I don't think that a mannequin replaces a human being. And it also doesn't replace an environment of a hospital where you're not just focused on your own patient. You have to be focused on whatever is around there and be able to adjust that and your patient's care accordingly. So yes, I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, board members. Before we vote, I would add one comment, and this has to do with the members of the public who are expressing concern regarding the effects of the hospitals that have eliminated their clinical training as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly, it's very clear to all of us that that is putting a lot of pressure on nursing schools in terms of how they deal with the need to provide direct patient care clinical training. But our data thus far, and I think board members have this data in their emails. The interesting thing about it is that when we looked at what the status of the pre-licensure nursing programs is relative to the requirements for hours of clinical training. So the BRN requires X number of hours of clinical training. It turns out that looking at all the pre-licensure programs, all three areas, ADN, BSN, and ELM, 75% of those programs, including one of the schools that was mentioned today, Los Medanos, require more clinical hours than the BRN regulations require. And early on, when the California hospitals declined to admit nursing students for clinical training, the BRN and through our NECs and through our acting executive officer and all of the discussions and meetings that have been held with nursing schools, both private and public, we were very, very clear that one solution to the current situation is for the schools to reduce their clinical requirements to the minimum, which is completely within the current regulations of the BRN. So they are able to do that as we speak. That is an option they have before them. So it's really not accurate to say in any way, shape, or form that the board has not been responsive to the current situation and the realities that has imposed on both students and nursing schools. So we would hope that schools who are in that situation, and as I said, it's 75% of them, would take up that option in order to solve some of this difficulty. So having said that, I will now call for the vote. 1 second here. I've got to reopen my. Okay, so Donna Gerber, yes. Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Yes, oppose.
Trandy Phillips.
Randy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Sebekowitz.
Imelda votes yes.
Kenneth Marlborough.
Malbrough, yes.
Great. Dolores Trujillo.
Trujillo, yes.
And Karen Skelton.
Skelton, yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Thelma. Oh, we should move now to the bill that we voted to put on the agenda, which is AB 2288.
Okay. Assembly Bill 2288 by Evan Lowe, who is the chair of Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. This bill is focusing on nursing programs for a state of emergency. It authorizes the director of an approved nursing program during a state of emergency to use clinical settings without meeting specified requirements, use preceptorships without having to maintain specified written policies, and to request that the approved nursing program be allowed to substitute up to an additional 25% of clinical practice hours in a course, not in direct patient care, and is subject to specified conditions and requirements. This bill, in a lot of ways, mirrors the waiver that has already that is in effect right now. The committee has not taken a position on this, so it will be up to the board to discuss it and take a position.
Okay, and on this bill, I'm going to recommend that the board take a support with some minor amendments, and I'll talk about that in a second. I want to clarify for the board that, as Thelma indicated, essentially this bill puts in place the current waiver, the current DCA BRN waiver. And in addition, essentially this bill, as it's currently written, would mirror the emergency regulation that the board has discussed and that we started discussing in March as soon as we knew what the issues were around the nursing schools and the hospitals. Essentially, what we said at that time was we would support a change in our regulation that would allow schools to go to 50% during a governor declared state of emergency with, certain specified contingencies, I guess I would call them. So it's very possible for us to, I think, consistent with our policies, support this particular bill. It's important, I think, that we take a position on this, as we discussed earlier, because this is an item that will be getting a lot of discussion and a lot of scrutiny, and will probably be moving through the process fairly quickly. The potential amendments that we need to make is to clarify. There's a section in the bill right now that says that this will be implemented when there is a governor declared state of emergency, but then it says something about, and Thelma, you can clarify the language here because I'm doing this from memory, but it basically says that the 50% would cease as soon as is practicable. And we need to look at that language a little closer to be able to make sure that the language of the bill is nailed down a little bit better and is very clear. Because if this bill passes, it will become statute. And when and if it becomes statute, then the board will have to implement the statute through regulation. So we just need to look at that particular section, as well as I think some of the other language, to make suggested amendments that doesn't change the intent, but just rather clarifies the language so that it's abundantly clear. So that's the recommendation that we're making to the board on AB 2288. Any questions or comments by board members at this point?
I have a quick question. What's a preceptorship?
Thelma, do you want to answer how that relates to preceptorship in this bill?
I don't know if specifically if they're just speaking of the fact of having a nurse who, a experienced nurse who is being, I don't know, a different word for preceptorship, being a mentor or a person who is overseeing the students at the time that they are learning and guiding them and teaching them.
It's my understanding, Karen, that this is not this is not a faculty nurse that also might be with a student, but this is in fact probably one of the existing staff nurses that works in the facility already.
This is Michael Jackson. A preceptor is a staff nurse who's taken some orientation from their facility that allows them to spend an extended amount of time with a student. And normally the preceptorship takes place throughout or at the end of the program. And
Okay.
it's in a designated unit. Say, for instance, we have them in the emergency department. We have several nurses that are designated as the preceptors for nursing students that come in and they spend 72 hours with one particular nurse because this might be a unit that they're particularly interested in. And so they have one dedicated preceptor that they're with. And then some hospitals do what's called paid internships and they assign a student to a preceptor and they can be with this preceptor for up to a year prior to graduating.
Great. Thank you for that clarification.
Just an FYI, we also have them in public health, and some are paid and some are just continuing their education there, their preceptor program at public health.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, can we open the public comment portal, please?
I've activated the question and answer feature. As a reminder, for your public comment, you will have 2 minutes. Board member Gerber, Judy Corliss would like to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I would like you to clarify that you had a June 30th ending on this waiver. And now it's saying that as soon as practicable. So the question I have is, what does the board propose to do with all the students who are left remaining and they're not going to be able to finish their program? That is a huge concern to all the nurses that are out there, and not only the ones that are about to graduate, but the ones coming into new cohorts. If you don't extend this, they're going to have no way of moving forward. So that's going to create a backlog of tens of thousands of nurses to help fill the need going forward. So since the hospitals are not willing to take students, and we don't know when they're going to do that again, I personally in Orange County have spoken to many of the CNOs, and they don't have any idea when they're going to do that. So the board has to be able to answer that question for these students because they're very, very upset. They're stuck with the student loans. And how are these students going to graduate for this pandemic situation that they've been placed in? So I am very concerned about that. And I want to know if there's any way that you can help these students and answer this issue. It's going to cause a huge problem. So thank you for letting me speak, and we'll continue on with this. Thank you.
Ms. Corliss, I want to clarify something for you. The BRN doesn't control the waiver. The DCA issued the waiver, and the DCA will actually be the one to determine what happens with the deadline, which is apparently June 30th, as you indicated. We were having discussion. We are having discussion about AB 2288. So any members of the public would appreciate you speaking to that agenda item. Mr. Moderator, do we have any more public comments?
Board Member Gerber, Saskia Kim would like to make a comment.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you again, Saskia Kim of California Nurses Association. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment on AB 2288, which seeks to codify several waivers approved by DPA. These are extraordinary times. Our members are on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. They're contracting and dying from coronavirus as a result of providing care to their patients under challenging circumstances. On May 12th, CNA marked the end of Nurses Week by holding a 1,000-person candlelight vigil for the more than 100 known registered nurses who have tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 in the United States. Experienced registered nurses and other healthcare personnel are having to make sacrifices in both their personal and professional lives just as severe as the challenges facing the nursing programs and student nurses in California nursing programs. As you know, CNA has concerns about replacing direct patient care clinical hours with simulation, and we continue to have those concerns. At the same time, we understand that we're currently in extraordinary circumstances, and the legislature is looking for ways to assist nursing students in addressing a hospital-created crisis. So we understand the need here for a necessary, narrow, and time-limited, but suboptimal alternative to direct patient care, which is rational under crisis conditions in order to address the needs of nursing students who, but for the actions of hospitals, would have graduated or progressed in their program. As I mentioned earlier in our discussion on the prior bill, CNA believes the exclusion of student nurses from clinical rotations undermines patient care. CNA nurses supervise the provision of care by students during their clinical rotations, and we believe student nurses are an important source of patient care services. As already mentioned, we've historically opposed replacing direct patient care clinical experience with skills laboratory learning. I won't repeat all of those concerns again, but I did just want to note, because I know the NCSBN study was brought up earlier, that study actually had many students drop out of the study, and those students were disproportionately students from minority groups and returning veterans. And the study group that had 50% clinical hours replaced by simulation had the highest rate of dropout. The control group that had less than 10% simulation had the lowest. And so those reasons make it clear that 50% simulation should only be allowed during an emergency such as the current one. And we also have our concerns about the private nursing programs being able to take advantage more than public. And finally, we have recommended a number of amendments to ensure the bill's intentions are carried out, to ensure any waiver of BRN statutes is related to the loss of clinical spots and lasts for the duration of the state of emergency, and that the bill's requirements are not overly broad. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, do we have any more public comment?
Board Member Gerber, Judy Corliss would like to speak again.
Go ahead.
Hello? Yes, I had.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had set it on the screen twice because it doesn't come up on my screen. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I had one other comment, and it was about the NCSBN study. That study was done not under pandemic conditions. So I think that what we've been asking for along the way is an emergency order utilizing all of the data that's been done since then. And I'm sorry that K2 Waxman is not on this call. She wasn't able to make it, but she's got all the data to support that this would not be a problem for students, especially at the end of their training. So hopefully she can speak at some point to you and get that information to the board. But unfortunately, it's not at the moment. So thank you so much for letting me speak again.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, do we have anybody else?
Board Member Gerber, the public comment queue is clear.
Yes. Okay, we will now go back to the board and the motion at hand. Hang on one second.
Ms. Gerber, this is Woods. I have a
Yes.
question about this bill.
Go right ahead.
Is this going to apply, is this bill apply to all students, not just students that at the end of their education, but also students coming in?
Thelma, could you clarify that?
Well,
I believe it applies to any students who existed at the time.
that is correct.
They're in the beginning or the end.
That is correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Say it again, please.
Okay, it applies to all students, no matter where they are in their program.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other comments or questions from board members? And can someone remind me, I believe we have a motion and a second.
Please say the motion again.
Okay, the motion would be on AB 2288 to support with amendments.
I second it once again.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more comment from the board? Hearing none, I will start the roll call. Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson votes yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods votes no.
Trandy Phillips.
Randy Phillips votes yes.
Imelda Bekowitz.
I'm going to abstain.
Kenneth Marlborough.
Marlboro votes yes.
Dolores Trujillo.
Trujillo votes yes.
Karen Skelton.
I'm going to abstain as well.
So we have 2 abstentions and 1 no. I believe that would be 5 votes yes, correct?
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Donna, before you move on, can you clarify what the amendment is for this bill?
Well, we're going to have to look a little bit more carefully at the specific language, but for sure, we're going to need an amendment regarding the definition of when the 50% would expire, to clarify that it expires as soon as the emergency expires, or some language around that.
Okay.
And there might be a couple of other, what I would consider more clarification or cleanup language, and I can't nail that down today, but we would work on that.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
All right, moving along. The next bill will be Assembly Bill 3016. Megan Dolly is the author of the bill. This bill is in reference to online license verification, and it's requiring the BRN to consult with DCA no later than July 1 of 2021 to develop recommendations for the implementation of the NERC's online license verification system. And what this system does is that it verifies the license of California nurses seeking to practice outside the state. This bill did pass out of Assembly B&P, and it's now going to Assembly Appropriations. The recommendation from the committee in March was to oppose the bill. The opposition of the reasoning behind opposing the bill is the fact that the BRN had already started to work on a process to address the inefficiencies that we agree that are going on as far as license verification, and the process to also include online verification through Breeze, payment through Breeze, which is our system of payment, to look at licensees' information. And this would all be done by the end of the year of 2020. And so we highly feel that taking this work outside of the state would not be something that we would want to do, moving it out of California, but to continue allowing BRN to process the licensees. And if the issues are around the fee, which our fee is $100, nurse's fee is $30, that is something that the legislature can come back and make that differential. That is not something we can change because it is in statute and in our regulations. But a process is already in place, and we would like to continue to work on making it more efficient.
Thank you. I'll just briefly add here for the board members and the public that what this boils down to is that we agree that we need to be more efficient in how we handle verifications, and verifications means that we are verifying for current California licensees that when they go outside of California, we verify that they are in fact licensed in California. This was a problem that was identified by the board some time ago, over a year ago, and we've been working and started working to try to streamline our own process, which does involve, a big part of it involves making it possible for these folks to do an online payment system. So that requires a change to the Breeze computer system. That's not entirely in the BRN's control. That's something that we send on to DCA and they make that happen. It also requires, for us to speed up the process, it requires that we made some changes to our own processes in-house. In addition, if you recall, those of you who were here, when we put in the budget change proposal for 94 additional staff positions, it was 94 or 96, we ended up, through the governor's office and the legislature, we ended up getting an approval for 67 of those. And included in that would allow us to increase our staffing to do verifications, so that, for example, right now we have about a half of a staff member that does that, and we would increase that to a person and a half. So we will have the staff to speed up our process. We have a way of impacting on the whole payment system issue. So what we would like to be able to communicate to the author and to the legislature on this is that we agree in the identification of the problem, but we respectfully suggest that the better solution is to streamline our own process and better serve our licensees by doing so. So that's the position that we would be suggesting to the board that we take on the legislation.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I totally agree. You know, we've had our issues. We've been working to resolve those issues. We've come a long way. We still have way to go. But I also don't agree that we should outsource, our jobs out of state or to other agencies. I think we are doing a good job. And again, I agree that we need to continue improving the process. But again, I would hate to see us outsource our jobs at the BRN. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Ken Marvell. Right now, what is the process time for BRN to do the verification? And then what is nurses' process time?
So nurses' process time is 48 hours and it costs $30. BRN's process time has been in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, Thelma, I'm going from memory, but I believe it's 4 to 6 weeks and costs $100.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And what are you striving to meet to improve that? What is the proposed?
What we've, yeah, good question. What we have been advised by staff is that they can reduce the processing time to 5 business days or less. They can get an online payment system as soon as Breeze makes that happen. And what we have said to the legislature is if the legislature wants to choose to change the fee, we will not object to that. I would just point out to the board, though, to just keep in mind that the reduction of the fee from 100 to say 30 would probably reduce funds of the BRN by somewhere around $2 million, perhaps more. It depends on how you calculate it.
In addition, I'd like to add that staff continue to cross-train on working these transactions. And at the beginning of this year, 2020, there were approximately 3,000 transactions, and we're down now to approximately 400. So there's been significant improvement.
Any other questions or comments by board members?
This is Michael Jackson. So
go ahead.
I agree with board member Seha Buckowitz. We don't need to be outsourcing California jobs, especially at a time like this when unemployment has really hit our state extremely hard. We don't need to lose another job from California. And there's no, I don't think there's a guarantee in the cost of it being $30 forever. I don't think there's a guarantee in that. And we've all seen what's happened with computer systems over the past 10 years. The DMV, Employment Office, and our own Breeze system. We don't know what type of upgrades our Breeze system will need to communicate with this particular system. I think we should continue to work within our own Breeze system to make business process improvements. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, any other board comments before we open it up to a motion and public comment? So the motion is to oppose the bill, indicate with the explanation that you've heard today. Do I have a second?
Michael Jackson seconds it.
Okay, this is AB 3016. Mr. Moderator, would you open it to public comment?
I have opened it up for public comment. Board Member Gerber, Saskia Kim would like to speak.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning again. Saskia Kim with the California Nurses Association. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment. CNA has a position of concern on this bill. Specifically, we're concerned that if the bill's recommendations are adopted, it would clear the way for the overall implementation of nurses, which would further remove the BRN and the state from overseeing the licensure of registered nurses in the state of California. We believe this would undermine public safety by inhibiting California's ability to set standards that apply to all nurses practicing in the state. So, for example, the standards for continuing education vary widely from state to state. At least 8 states do not require any continuing education whatsoever, and it's not clear whether nurses evaluates and verifies CE requirements, which of course the board does. If California implemented nurses, it would have to recognize the licenses of nurses from the 8 states that do not require CE, and in a field that evolves as quickly as healthcare, CE is critical to maintaining competency and safe practice. So this would result in nurses being held to different standards despite working in the same state. A nurse from Colorado would be treated differently than a nurse from California. If California implemented nurses, nurses from Colorado would be able to practice here despite the fact that they are not required to engage in any CE at all. California would also lose the ability to maintain state sovereignty to a national entity, and CSBN, which is not a regulatory entity itself, and nurses who are deemed unsafe in other states should not be allowed to move into California to practice. As has already been talked about, the board would also lose revenue, affecting its ability to enforce standards, and could result in loss of staff positions and increasing delays in provision of services to licensees and complaint investigations, which will endanger the public. Finally, during and beyond the current pandemic, it is essential California retain its nursing workforce. We're concerned AB 3016 minimizes the state's efforts to retain its nursing workforce. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you. Any more public comment?
Board Member Gerber, the comment queue is clear.
Okay, it's back to the board. If there are no questions, we'll go forward with the motion.
Can you repeat the motion, please, Donna?
Yes, the motion is to oppose, and the body of the letter will explain that we agree that there is a problem, but we disagree with the solution. And it will outline all the steps that the board is taking to streamline our ability to provide the service.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward, Donna Gerber, yes. Michael Jackson?
Michael Jackson, yes.
Elizabeth Woods?
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips?
Trandy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Sehabekowitz?
Imelda votes yes.
Kenneth Marlborough?
Marlboro votes yes.
Dolores Trujillo?
Trujillo votes yes to oppose.
And Karen Skelton?
Skelton, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along. For board members, for board members, just FYI, because we're discussing these bills in this part of the agenda, the good news is when we get to the committee portion for the May committee meeting, we won't have to go into this much discussion. FYI. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, we have 2 more bills. All right, Senate Bill 1053, Morlack. This is the Nurse Licensure Compact Bill, and the committee did vote back in March to oppose the bill. However, the bill did fail in Senate B&P, so I don't know if you wanted to go into discussion about the bill or where you wanted to go.
Well, Thelma, we already did we have an opposed letter on the bill?
Yes, we did have an opposed letter on the bill. I did testify on the bill. and it did fail in Senate BNP. That's not saying that
Okay.
it might not be reconsidered at some point, so I don't know if you wanted to discuss it or not.
I don't think we need to discuss it. We have a position on it. I just want the board members to know that at the moment, it's not alive.
That is correct.
Okay. Any comments or questions by board members? This is really more of a status report. Okay, let's go to the last bill.
Right, the last bill is Senate Bill 1237 by Senator Dodd. And this bill is regarding nurse midwives and the scope of practice. It removes the requirement for the physician or surgeon supervision for a certified nurse midwife to practice midwifery. It also revises provisions defining the practice of midwifery and authorizes the certified nurse midwife to attend cases out of a hospital setting, to also to furnish or order drugs or devices in accordance with standardized protocols. This bill is being supported by our Nurse Midwifery Advisory Committee, which does meet 2 to 3 times a year. There is language currently in the bill that talks about a new committee that would allow 40% to be physicians. And I do understand from the Nurse Midwife Advisory Committee that they are in the process of having that language removed, because that is something that they do not agree with, and that is something that the CMA and ACOG have told them that they plan to change. But at this point, it is in the language and has not been removed. However, they do go before Senate Appropriations June 1st, which is next Monday, and it would be at that opportunity that we would hear about the new language. The committee at the time when this was not as detailed of the language that has been amended did vote to support this bill. And so that is the status that we have as today.
On this, I'd like to hear from Board Member Woods if you have any discussion on this particular bill.
Well, I think we're kind of dealing with the same thing. We're trying to improve autonomy of nursing practice, yet there are these little committees that are in the background there, which it's hard to know what they're going to do. And I would be supportive of the bill allowing the increased autonomy for the nurse midwives, but I'm concerned about these little side committees also. So I would like to see that something like that removed, because I don't have a clear explanation now what that exists for.
And Board Member Woods, as I recall, the current committee that exists within the BRN as an advisory committee, does that have a physician on it?
Yes, it does. It's in our statute as well. There is a physician.
But there's one, correct?
That is correct, one.
Well, we already have that, so I don't see why there would need to be a new committee formulated around that.
It's Board Member, this would increase to at least 40% of the members of the committee to be physicians and surgeons.
Oh, please.
Yes.
No, I'm opposed to that, certainly. If we have something already in place and the midwives are going to be under the BRN, so we have what we have. We're not changing that at the particular time, but I'm certainly not into having another committee with 4 physicians on it.
Okay, well, so we have the recommendation from our chair of Nursing Practice Committee. The recommendation to the board is to, I guess we want to do a support if amended or oppose if amended?
Well, I would say support it only if that's removed. And that has to be removed. It looks like it's
Right.
going to be, but we don't have documentation of that.
Okay, so the position would be,
I certainly want to be I want to be supportive, of course, of the nurse midwives and their scope of practice, but that needs to go.
okay, so the position recommendation to the board is support if amended. And Thelma, what we would specifically amend is we would continue with our current committee structure.
Okay,
Correct?
that is correct.
Okay. So that would be the recommended motion on this. Do I have a second?
This is
Ms.
Skelton,
Wood?
second.
Okay, thank you. Second by Karen Skelton. So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Moderator, would you open it up for public comment? And then I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion if needed.
Public comment is now open. Board Member Gerber, there are no public comments.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions by board members?
Donna, this is Thelma. I do want to add to the fact that also in the language, it is requiring the committee to make recommendations to the board on all matters relating to midwifery practice, education, appropriate standard of cares, and other matters as specified by the board. Basically, this is stating that they want to be involved in the discipline moving forward. And it's my understanding that is also language that they're planning to remove from the bill, but it is there now.
Okay, well then I'll clarify that the motion would include an amendment, removing that particular section of the bill as an amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and 2 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry, we added
That's okay.
that on my other piece.
Got it. Got it. So do you want me to call the roll call now? I'm just going to go ahead. Donna Gerber, yes. Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson votes yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
Trandy Phillips.
Randy Phillips, yes.
Imelda Seha Bekowitz.
Imelda Seha Bedgwitz, yes.
Kenneth Mopro.
Malbro, yes.
Dolores Trujillo.
Trujillo, yes.
And Karen Skelton.
Skelton, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe, Thelma, unless you have something else, I believe that is our agenda.
Donna, I don't have anything else. I do want to bring to your attention, though, that the legislative calendar was revised the 1st of May because the legislature was out during the influx of the COVID stay-at-home orders, and that's the dates have changed just slightly. So the June 5th date is the last day for fiscal committees. And right now we're right at the edge of May 29th being the last day for policy committees. Then it will continue as you have on your calendar with the budget bill and the assembly floor session.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from board members before we conclude this item, this agenda item? Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your patience. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We're moving along to, first of all, do we need to take a 5 or 10 minute break?
I'm in favor of that.
We'll take a 10-minute break. Be back here a little after 10.
Okay, great.
Thank you. We will.
So Michael, do you want me to take over, or are you we're gonna continue with unfinished agenda items from May 27th? And that would be the item number 7.0, Report on Intervention Discipline Committee. My name is Imelda Seja-Butkowitz. I am the chairperson, the chairman, and we have staff ready to report on 7.1, which is informational only. Staff, can you please introduce yourself? I'm not sure who's doing the report.
I'm sorry, 1 second, please. Stacy Baruman, your mic has been unmuted.
Hello, board members. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. This is Dolores.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. This is Stacy Berman, Enforcement Chief for the Board of Registered Nursing. I'll be reporting on agenda item 7.1, which is information only, complaint intake, intervention, citation, and legal desk. Complaint intake unit update. The complaint intake units implemented teleworking for staff beginning in March. The transition has had some challenges, but staff has responded well. Since the governor's stay-at-home order began in March, the weekly volume of complaints has dropped. We're monitoring that information as we move forward. Since telework was initiated, all incoming complaints are being processed on average within 2 days of receipt by the BRN. AB 2138 update. Unit managers Jessica Perry and Sonia Wilson are leading BRN's preparations for the implementation of AB 2138. These changes will go into effect on July 1, 2020. Although the law will significantly change the internal enforcement procedures for applicants, most applicants for licensure will not be affected by these changes in law. Changes to the processes include, but is not limited to, the following. The application for licensure will no longer ask the applicant if they have a prior criminal conviction. The BRN will rely on fingerprint results from the California DOJ and FBI. BRN shall not consider criminal convictions which occurred more than 7 years from the date of application. The 7-year limitation does not apply to serious felonies as defined in the law. BRN shall not consider any criminal conviction that has been dismissed or expunged pursuant to section 1203.4, 1203.4A, 1203.41, or 1203.42 of the Penal Code, or a comparable dismissal or expungement. An applicant who has a conviction that has been dismissed pursuant to section 1203.4, 1203.4A, 1203.41, or 1203.42 of the Penal Code shall provide proof of the dismissal if it is not reflected on the fingerprint report furnished by the Department of Justice. The BRN shall not require the applicant to disclose any information or documentation regarding the applicant's criminal history. The board may request mitigating information from an applicant regarding the applicant's criminal history, provided the applicant is informed that disclosure is voluntary and that the applicant's decision not to disclose any information shall not be a factor in a board's decision to grant or deny an application for licensure. Beginning July 1, applicants will no longer be required to send the board documentation regarding their past convictions. For all convictions falling within the AB 2138 timeframes, the BRN Enforcement Division will conduct investigations to obtain law enforcement and court records prior to making application decisions. BRN anticipates this new process to take several weeks. However, the BRN will accept certified arrest and court records voluntarily submitted by the applicant. Intervention, citation, and legal support update. General update. Beginning March 2nd, the Attorney General's office has taken over the service of all pleadings, including accusations and petitions to revoke probation. As of the date of this report, the Enforcement Management Team is working to assess the long-term impact this change will have and to determine the full extent of changes to our internal business process. Intervention, citation, and legal support staffing. Intervention evaluation committees. There are currently 4 physician member vacancies. There is 1 public member vacancy, and there is 1 nurse member vacancy. Outreach. 2 presentations were given in February by Maximus and BRN enforcement staff. Maximus previewed a new informational video on substance use disorder in the health professions and the services provided through their recovery programs, including the BRN intervention program. Maximus plans to release the final version in March, and the intervention unit will link the video on the BRN website. That concludes my report for item 7.1. Are there any questions?
Board members, do you have any questions? Is there any comments from the public? Moderator.
Open up the public comment. Board member Seja Bukowitz, there are no public comments.
Okay, Stacy, can you please continue with item 7.2?
Yes, thank you. Item 7.2, information only, investigations update. Investigators are not conducting face-to-face interviews as a result of Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Before the pandemic, investigation staff developed a scanning process for cases to continue to move towards a green approach. The Southern California team volunteered to develop and work out any kinks in the scanning process. They were quite successful in developing the process and procedures and conducted phone training with the Northern and Central teams during the week of March 16th, 2020, and all staff began scanning March 23rd, 2020. All investigators are now scanning their cases so they can be moved forward in the enforcement process much more expeditiously. The investigation supervisors recently adapted all forms requesting records to be provided electronically instead of allowing facilities to provide paper copies, in the hopes that this will also assist in our scanning process. BRN DOI Case Prioritization Pilot Project. The BRN and the Department of Consumer Affairs Division of Investigation continue to follow the 1-year pilot program. Since April 14th, 2020, approximately 61 cases that meet the new case referral guidelines have been referred to BRN investigations. BRN investigation staff closed 95 cases in March 2020, which is by far the highest number on record so far. And that concludes my report on item 7.2. Are there any questions?
Seeing no questions or comments from any board member, moderator, can you please open it for public comment?
Public comment is now open. Board members say how about Bekowitz? There are no public comments.
Seeing none, we will continue with item 7.3. It's informational only.
Item 7.3, discipline and probation update. The probation unit currently is teleworking successfully and only returning to the office once a week to take care of any administrative items that cannot be done at home. Year to date, 185 RNs completed probation successfully by either early termination or completing their full term. 64 RNs were unsuccessful in completing their term, resulting in 24 revocations and 40 surrenders. Discipline unit. Currently, the discipline unit is also teleworking successfully and only returning to the office once a week to take care of any administrative items that cannot be done at home. We continue to focus our efforts on aging cases, striving to meet the CPI guidelines of 540 days. Approximately half of our cases are completed within this time frame. Overall average is 610 days, which is only 70 days shy of our goal. The AG's office has also decreased their aging cases by 60 days in the last 6 months. Currently, the discipline unit has only 7 cases over 2 years old and 88 that are 1 to 2 years old, which is approximately 14% of our overall pending discipline cases. And that concludes my report for item 7.3. Are there any questions?
This is Donna. I just wanted to say that on the report of the numbers of cases that are a year old or more, that these statistics are very encouraging. And I want to commend the chair of the committee and the staff because, you know, these are great numbers, and I know you're continuing to work on it, but especially under the conditions that we're currently operating, I'm very impressed.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Any other any other member would like to make a comment? Have a question? If not, moderator, please open it to the public for public comment.
Public comments are now open. Board members say how about Bekowitz? There are no public comments.
Thank you. Stacy, thank you again. Again, I want to thank the staff and yourself. You guys are doing a great job considering the circumstances. I also want to make sure that you guys are taking care of yourself. You know, it's really stressful and it's really hard to work at home, especially if you're not used to it. I mean, it's the new norm, I guess, but it's still very difficult. So I just want to make sure that your staff have resources to take care of themselves. Please do that, okay? And if not, reach out to the board members because it's important for us that you staff are doing everything to protect yourself and to take care of yourself during these difficult times and working at home. I mean, it's stressful working at home, coming to work, if you have to pick up documents and then go back and, you know, not socializing with your coworkers or anybody, it could be pretty depressing. So please keep us informed. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Imelda. It's actually been quite tremendous how well our staff have done with the short all you know, had in the beginning, but they've really done a wonderful job moving into telework and utilizing all of the electronic means that we have to do their jobs. And we have a new option to use Microsoft Teams, which was rolled out during COVID-19. And so our managers meet regularly with staff using Teams. They're able to use the video portion of that so they can see each other. They also interact with each other using this Teams environment. So that's been very helpful as we moved out to the telework environment.
And thank you for your leadership, Stacy.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move along to item 7.4. Again, it's informational only. So Stacy, you will be giving the report on enforcement and interventions statistics.
Yes. Attached on the internet and provided to the board members is the data for all of the enforcement processes that include intake, intervention, investigation, citation and fine, discipline and probation. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board members might have.
Seeing no questions from board members, moderator, would you please open to for public comment?
Public comment is now open. Board members say how about there are no public comments.
Seeing no public comments, this concludes the report for the Intervention and Discipline Committee. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your report. Now we'll be moving on to back to our regular agenda for today, which is we already completed item 6.0, 7.0 from yesterday. And now we will move into our committee meetings. And just for information only, the committee meetings will not be webcast.
Mr. President, I think we have to call the roll and approve the minutes.
Are there any minutes for us to approve for the board meeting?
I'm looking at May 28th and I see March 12th, 2020.
Let me see.
I know it's confusing because we have multiple agendas here.
I'm looking at the agenda.
8.0, 8.01.
My 8.0 says the legislative committee is scheduled on May 28th.
Okay, never mind.
Let me go back and look and make sure.
That's what
I've just been advised. I have the wrong agenda. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Let me just make sure.
Oh, I had two 8.0s also. Okay.
Maybe the agenda got modified.
So this is the agenda for us to reconvene.
Okay.
We didn't need to go into open session, so we're looking at item 2.0 on today's agenda. Item 3.0, we didn't need to go into closed session today because we finished all that business yesterday. 4.0, we continued into open session. 5.0, we continue with agendas for items from yesterday. Item 6.0, we reordered the agenda. Item 5.0, we completed 6 and 7 from yesterday. Now we're on to item 6.0, which is the committee meetings. The committee meetings will not be webcast at this time. And we're moving into item 7.0, which is the committee meeting for education and licensing. And then following that is the legislative committee. And then following that is the enforcement and intervention committee.